So, okay, well, we can jump in and get started now that our discussion of politics is over that no one will ever hear. So, I started watching Jackpot. Funny enough, when we started the show in our pre-show, we talked about really just for a second idiocracy and how it takes place in the future. Well, Jackpot takes the opening kind of splash screen says basically in 2026 there's an economic crash and money goes all to shit, so everybody's poor, and so this takes place a couple years in the future. It's not doesn't feel like sci-fi or anything like that. It's just a few years in the future. And first off, it's a comedy. Aquafina's hilarious. John Cena, when he does comedy, is over the top and funny. um and the gist of the story is that in LA, and this is totally this could have been written as like a purge style horror film, but instead it's written as a comedy. The idea is that everybody has a little lottery card, and when the lottery, if you buy into the lottery, you can press your little digital lottery card, and if your name comes up, you're the winner of said lottery. The only way to keep that lottery is to survive for 24 hours. And what happens is once you win, everybody is notified. Everybody with a lottery ticket is notified who you are. If they kill you, they get the money. Aquafina she's come back from the Midwest, I think is where she was. Her mother had just passed away. She had been a child actor. She wanted to try to get back into acting. And like one of the early scenes is her going to an audition. It just doesn't go well. Like the audition doesn't go well. She takes this thing out of her pocket. She doesn't even know it's in there, and it's the lottery ticket. And she accidentally presses it, and she wins $3.6 billion. And so, like immediately, everybody's notified. So there's this hallway she's in, and there's like 6 or 7 girls in there that are also auditioning. Um, and like there's a couple of lines about, oh, everything's gonna be okay, everything's gonna be okay, and then they just all attack her all at once, because like it just starts like as soon as you know who it is, you can kill them right away. But like I couldn't I'd have to watch it again now to remember for sure, but I think it's um whoever holds the card at the end of the day. So I think if you killed her, you would still have to protect yourself. And so the way the movie goes, she just all of a sudden ends up under attack, and she has done some stage combat training, so she's able to kind of hold her own for a little bit. And then John Cena comes crashing in through the roof, and he's like super, super badass because he's a gigantic man. And basically, he says, "If you give me 10% of your winnings, I will keep you alive for 24 hours. That will be my only job, whatever." And so now they've kind of buddied up. She doesn't know anything about this because she's from the Midwest. She doesn't even understand how the lottery works. She doesn't know anything about it. So like what kind of works as a storytelling piece is that we, the audience, are told how the lottery works as she's learning how the lottery works. Um, because it's crazy. And so I mean, this movie is it feels like it's 80% action. Like it's just always crazy. Like this is action comedy to the actionist, and it's really just a lot of fun. Like she's always hilarious. John Cena, I think he's funnier than he's given credit for. He's been doing better and better for himself as an actor over the years, the longer he's doing it outside of wrestling. He did a show on HBO called The Peacemaker, which was James Gunn's, sort of superhero show that's very, very adult. But there's some scenes in that show. If you watch it, you find out that John Cena just fully improvised his scenes, and they're hilarious. So he's actually, I don't know if he was always talented or if he's just gotten more talented over the years, but he's got a knack for comedy that really works. And so action comedy really works for him. And so the way this goes over time, he's trying to get her from place to place to keep her safe. Because what happens is there's a drone following her, and I think they said every 14 minutes it reports where she is. So if she manages to lose everybody in 14 minutes or less, everybody's going to know where she is again. So she's got to keep on the move, stay within LA. If you leave, like if you get past the grapevine in LA, you forfeit the money, but no one has to kill you anymore. And one of the rules is there's no ballistics. You can't shoot anybody with a gun to kill them. So the idea is it has to be hand to hand combat to kill somebody. And so uh he's keeping her on the run. Things are getting kind of hot and heavy. So earlier in the movie, she was in a cab, and the girl in the cab said she had a friend that um, built a panic room for Machine Gun Kelly. And so they're like, okay, well, they go to Machine Gun Kelly's house. And I'm not familiar with Machine Gun Kelly at all. Like, I don't know his music. I know he was with or is with Megan Fox. Like that's like the end of my Machine Gun Kelly knowledge. Uh, his part was small, but I mean, he did good. He was funny. I think I saw something that he's friends with John Cena a little bit, or at least they've done a couple of films together at this point, and had a good time. So, his role was small, but he was great. So they end up in this panic room. Um, John Cena's finally starting to feel overwhelmed because everybody's after her. This is the biggest pot they've had in, God knows how long. And so he calls in a favor, and the favor he calls in is from Simu Liu, who is Shang-Chi in the MCU. He's been in some other stuff in the last few years. Like he's really kind of on his way up. The joke at the beginning of his career is he was a guy that was in stock photos. Like if you ever see photos of offices on websites and stuff where people just buy the picture and use them, he was like Asian dude B in a bunch of the stock photos, and so he's like all over people's websites, and now he's making money in Hollywood, and he's really great. Like he was really good in Shang-Chi, but he was in that with Awkwafina, and they had a bunch of good dialogue in that. And so his role in this is he is like the ultra business version of John Cena. Like he owns a company, like a full company that does what John Cena is doing for Awkwafina in protecting her. And so, she goes to their headquarters. They have all this technology, all this stuff to keep her alive, and instead of 10%, they want 30%. And John Cena's like, yeah, you should pay them. He's like, they can do what I can't do. Um, and we come to find out that one of the reasons that John Cena does this at $10,000 is he was involved in something in his past where things went sideways and these families lost people in their families because of the things that he did. And so anytime he protects somebody and gets his 10%, he donates that money to these families. And so like he's a really like just the whole time he's like a good guy who, of course, at least at first she doesn't trust because she doesn't understand the situation. She doesn't understand him, doesn't know him. And so the whole thing is them getting to know each other. Um, and then, once they're hooked up with Simu Liu for a little while, you find out that um, Simu Liu's company has decided it's more beneficial, even though they said 30%, to just kill her and take the money. So all of a sudden he's got to protect them, got to protect her from this big company now too. Uh, and it's a fun movie. Like there's not a lot to it. It's literally keep girl alive for 24 hours, have funny dialogue, and it's an action comedy. So live happily ever after. Like that's the gist of the whole thing. Um, I wouldn't say that their relationship ever feels romantic, but they have a great like personal connection at least. And the way that they play off of each other and learn about each other and kind of form this bond and friendship with each other is really great. I just thought the movie it was a lot of fun. It wasn't the best movie I've ever seen. It wasn't brilliant. It didn't redefine anything. But it was fun and it was on Amazon Prime. And if you have Prime, you don't have to pay for it. So like that's a good selling point to me for an entertaining movie. Um, and it was just a lot of fun. Like I definitely, if you have Prime, you're just looking to have a good time. Um, I assume it's only PG-13. I'm trying to think the only reason that I could think of that it would potentially be rated R if there's too many F bombs in there. Um, but if that's not the case, if it's not rated R, then it's definitely family friendly. There's no sex in it. There's no There's no drugs. There's no like real violence. Most of it's punching and kicking because there's no guns involved, right? So it's just a fun action comedy that I think is definitely worth watching if that's your jam, and especially if you have Prime.
Yeah, and those 2 are hilarious. I think she's so incredibly talented, Awkwafina, and
She
she's
really
been
is.
really on the rise, I'd say, even right before COVID, they've been
Mhm.
Crazy Rich Asians, just I mean, I loved her as the voice of Scuttle and The Little
Mm.
Mermaid, so she's making little cameo appearances, and John Cena is so great behind the camera, or well, really in front of the camera. I shouldn't say behind the camera, but in front of the camera. It's just interesting to see how he has taken his life from the ring all the way to the wrestling ring, right?
Mhm.
WWE, WWF. I don't know the difference. Sorry.
It was WWF until the World Wildlife Fund sued them, and they had to change it to
Oh,
WWE,
oh,
or they
sorry.
were in danger of being sued, and then they had to change it. Yeah.
So funny.
Um,
But
yeah.
yeah, yeah, he's fantastic. Didn't he host the ESPN Awards or something like that a couple years ago? Or I don't
He
know.
might have. He might have. He's
He's
just,
so funny.
yeah, he really, really is. And if you watch, like I said, Peacemaker, and then I don't know if it's the end of every episode or if it's the end of the season, but they showed like outtakes and stuff. And
Mhm.
just, I mean, the stuff that he came up with and the stuff that he did, he's just hilarious. He's so funny. And what's crazy to me is this movie has a 32% from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes and a 50% from the audience. So
Yeah,
I don't know what the expectations were.
I think just
Um,
make something goofy, possibly, right? Or
I mean, that's what it feels like. It feels like they were just having fun.
oh yeah,
It's a very, very simple premise that they do not stretch. Like, survive 24 hours, get your money. He's going to save her.
sure.
Chaos ensues. And I mean, that's really the gist of it. But I really did enjoy it. And like I said, if you already have Prime, it's basically free. So
Yeah,
it is worth sitting down and just watching. He does really well. And she's hilarious. I love her. And then Simu Liu, like I don't remember if he was in Crazy Rich Asians or not. I don't think
I know
he
he was in
was.
He was in the Barbie movie.
He was in the Barbie movie. I liked him in that.
Yeah.
I love Shang-Chi. Like I loved him in that. Like and his relationship with Awkwafina, and that was great too, because um they were sort of similar actually to these two. Where she was kind of the bumbling sidekick kind of character,
Hmm.
and he was um he was a superhero. But uh
Awesome.
she's like you said, she's doing really well for herself right now. She's
Oh yeah.
I think at the end, I think she must have been a YouTuber when it started. Because like at the end, there's a joke about how, what's she gonna do with all this money? And then they're like, yeah, they say something about going in acting. They're like, no, everybody goes in acting now. There's YouTubers and wrestlers and blah, blah. And so they make a joke about it. It's funny, like it's tongue in cheek all the way. And I just I thought it was really good. And one thing I love too is I know I don't know anything about Machine Gun Kelly, but I love when actors play a parody version of themselves in a movie, whether
Yeah.
it's somebody coming in and playing a total asshole version of themselves, which always makes me laugh, or if they're just, just a caricature of what everybody thinks they are or whatever. I think it's a lot of fun. So
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it looks funny.
yeah, and I mean, that's all it is, and I think that's what makes it fun. So I'm really curious to see, long term where this ends up on Rotten Tomatoes, because this only has been out for a day. It's not in the theater, so it's probably not getting as many reviews as it would if it was somewhere else. I want to see what it shows up as on IMDb real quick. So it's a 5.9 on IMDb, so it's like a 5 or a 6 across the board for most people.
Right.
I'd give it a 6 or a 7, and just have a good time watching it.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's included in Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, you get Prime.
yeah.
Why not?
All right. So
Can I actually give a suggestion based
Yeah,
on
yeah,
theme? Can we talk about Emily in Paris?
yeah. I was gonna say that season just came
Okay.
out, right?
So Emily in Paris started, I think in what, 2001? Was that when it started?
I think
2000,
so.
oh, 2020. Really? Oh man. 2020, end of 2020. If you want a show have you seen it, Kevin?
I have not.
Oh my God, so good. Andrew, don't watch it. You're not gonna like or appreciate it, but that's okay. You would hate it. Uh, it is, oh my God, just a fantasy. It is funny and lighthearted and sweet, sometimes a little bit serious, but if you want that show that is a true escape from your day job, that 9 to 5 or whatever's going on in your life, please put on Emily in Paris. It's on Netflix. Season 4 was launched this week, I believe, on Wednesday or Thursday. I binged the first 5 episodes that came out for season 4, and I've been itching for this to come out for a while. It's why I renewed my Prime. I'm not my Prime, excuse me, my Netflix membership. Yeah, subscription, excuse me, because I've been looking forward to this. So it's a really great series. It follows Emily Cooper, who is a young 20s, early 30s social media savant or social media marketing expert who initially comes from Chicago, and she's able to get this work opportunity and moves to Paris. Initially was only supposed to be for a couple months. And as you see and learn along the way, her journey expands over time, and she gets to meet a whole slew of people within this new marketing firm that is a version of, or at least a subsidiary of her company based out of Chicago. So you get to meet Sylvie, who is the boss and the head of this boutique marketing firm, who is Emily's boss, and then her 2 coworkers, who you may, one of them was actually in White Lotus, Bruno Giori. He plays Luke, and then Samuel Arnold, who plays Julian, those 2 are hysterical. Those are her colleagues that work for this marketing firm. And then she falls for her neighbor. She lives in this like beautiful little apartment building in Paris. And a floor or 2 below is Gabrielle, who is this aspiring chef who catches her eye, and he's absolutely gorgeous. And yeah, and then some other friends on the way. If you're a fan of Ashley Park, who's
I like her
been
a lot.
Girls and a number of other shows, she plays her friend Mindy on the show. Mindy Chen, who is an aspiring singer. Well, I shouldn't say aspire. She sings, and she is Emily's best friend there in Paris. It's just a good time if you're looking for a fun show, fashion, a little bit of love drama, all thrown into one show. You're gonna love it. Season 4 just came out, and so far so good. I was very much so. I'm just waiting for it to get bad, and it still isn't bad. It's still very good. It's season 3, and I don't want to give too much away for those of you who haven't watched it, but season 3 ended on a very interesting note with a bit of a a dilemma with one major character, and then Emily is unfortunately she is seeing there's a new love interest that comes into play in season 2, who is a guy named Alfie, who is this British business finance bro guy who ends up having a really big heart, who she meets in French class to better her French because it sucks, as you'll come to see in the first few seasons. She doesn't know what she's saying, and they fall for each other when she finds out Gabrielle, the chef, is attached to somebody else. And yeah, and now season 4 is out, and she's single and ready to mingle, but I don't know if Paris is ready for her to be single, and we'll leave it at that. So it's hysterical. It's a really fun show. The costumes are awesome. The scenery is awesome. People will want to go to Paris. If you haven't been to Paris, I've been to Paris once. I want to go back. It's filled with such great energy. I'm not saying the acting's great by any means, but if you want a good show to escape to, and it's a lady show for sure, but men definitely give it a try too if you're looking for a fun escape experience as well.
Yeah, and it for nothing else, I know Lily Collins is really easy on the eyes. She's pretty. Um,
Stunning. And yeah, she gets to wear all these awesome outfits. And yeah, she plays Emily Cooper, the protagonist in the show.
yeah.
So yeah,
All right,
very
cool. Yeah, I've heard fun things about it. I've never been super interested in seeing it, but
yeah,
I might check it out if it's fun, then it's fun. Like
fun.
I don't have a problem with the shows that are more girl oriented, especially if they're a little more fun. Like I never watched Gossip Girl, but I did watch You on Netflix, which is
Yeah.
it's female forward. I don't know that it's
Right, but it's
entirely.
murder. That's murder,
Yeah,
right? This isn't
yeah.
murder. This is
And
just
Penn Badgley
good fun time.
is a good creeper in that one.
Yeah.
Um and same with what was the one, there's all the girls that were in, I think they were in high school. Oh, Pretty Little Liars. I
Oh,
got hooked on that one back in the beginning too. So like I'm not averse to watching a show that is, like I said, kind of female forward. If it's fun, it's fun. That's what it
so
comes
fun.
down to. So
It's
um
fun, it's lighthearted. You get to see some good food, you get to see some great costumes. The cat, everyone's beautiful on that show. But it's just kind of, it's got this innocence about it too, you know. It's not one of those shows where it's like overly provocative. It's just makes you want to go to Paris and just escape.
yeah, Paris is one of the places I personally want to go. I've been to Rome. It's the only, like, Italy is the only place I've been outside of the US. And
Mhm.
so I went to Rome, Venice, and Milan. So I was in those three cities. Um, Milan kind of blows. Milan's basically San Francisco. But when I was there, I was actually told why. So the reason that Milan looks so modern is because during World War II, Milan got bombed to hell, and so they had to rebuild everything. So everything was built
Uh-huh.
after the 40s. So it's a much newer city than something like Rome, where you have things
Right,
that are 2,000 years old, or Venice, where you just can't build new in Venice, right? It's on the water. There's no more real estate to build on. So, um,
right.
but Milan is also like the fashion capital of the world, right? But I walked through the Milan like gallery mall, and like they have stores that are just stupid, like just stuff is just crazy expensive, and um, it's a neat
Yeah.
place though. Like it really like uh, Italy's cool. So I've always wanted to go to Paris. I think um, because I like to eat and I like to eat pastries. I'm like like I have this like dream of sitting on like at a cafe with a French cappuccino and like a croissant and a piece of and whatever the big ass piece of bread by the river, looking at the Eiffel
See
Tower.
a
Like,
lot of that in like
yeah,
almost every episode. They're always at a cafe. And it's just so funny because it highlights, and you'll appreciate this, Kevin, how lax they are when it comes to just the day-to-day work life. And Emily comes in with this, you know, American mentality of like work, 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 work. And even her boss is like, chill, we take a long lunch, you know? And it's just it's very funny just how our mentality in America towards really just corporate America, how we have to like work ourselves to death. And they're like, nah, it's not worth it. Life. They're just so much more chill in Europe.
yeah,
And this
yeah,
the show really highlights that. It's such a dream in so many ways, this show, and it's fantastic.
yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I might give it a shot then.
It may
Um,
make you want to book a trip to Paris.
yeah, and I already do. The advantage is I don't have any money, so I can't go right now anyways, but um someday, like I definitely I do want to end up there someday.
Yeah, it's funny because like this past 5 episodes, one thing I was, you know, thinking, I was like, what haven't they shown yet in Paris? And I just thought about it. The French Open, Roland Garros, and they finally had an episode where they showed Roland Garros, and They didn't actually show tennis really being played, but them at Roland Garros, and I'm like, that's a huge part of Paris. It happens
Yep.
once a year, and yeah, they highlight that. They highlight the fashion, and she's in like a boutique, very luxurious marketing firm that she works at. So you get to see them advertise for champagne and perfume and cosmetics, skincare, like everything luxury, and it's so great. The show, I really, and normally I don't like that type of stuff, but it's funny and it's lighthearted. It's I think it's maybe it's the innocence that I'm bought into, and just how refined it is, and also just true to itself. And Emily, the character Emily, you just want to be friends with the girl because she's so genuine and has a really good heart. She's not the type who's just superficial. And even though she wears expensive things, she's the type who really just cares about her work and who cares about her friendships more than just what she actually is wearing. And I think that's what I felt so compelling about the show, just the genuine spirit around it.
Yeah, I definitely like a show with where a character doesn't have to be like a bad person to be interesting. A lot of
Right.
times you'll have these like where yeah, the Devil Wears Prada, where what's her name's character, the boss, um, she's
Oh, Meryl Streep.
yeah, Meryl, she's the worst. She's the absolute worst.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and that's the point, and like that works, and that kind of helps make the movie. But like sometimes it's nice to see somebody that's just nice. Like I said, with Jackpot, John Cena's, I mean, he's just a nice guy. Like the
Right.
whole time, he's just a nice guy, and that's nice to see.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the boss is definitely very tough. The one who plays Sylvie, that's Emily's boss in the show, but she opens up and you could tell she has like good intentions and stuff. But she starts off like in the first season, you see, and then her layers are pulled back a bit, and you realize like, why is she so hard, and just kind of just has a very rough exterior as a woman. But then you learn more about the French culture and just their love language too, and how it's very different than I guess the American way as well. But even her, like, she doesn't have like malintent. I don't take it away, and she wants to really respect Emily and her creative approach, and how Emily is such a large contributor to this marketing firm, and she's filled with ideas, and her digital approach to things with social media becomes like a huge part of this company's success in Paris. So you live through the lens of Emily as an American living in Paris and working in Paris, and everything that she sees as a new experience. So it's really cool. Yeah. I can't recommend it enough. It's so fun. It's sort of like I was actually thinking about it prior to us jumping on this evening. It gives me vibes very similar to Girl Next Door, like just with
Hmm.
the fun aspect of just wanting to be there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. You see that.
Yeah. So
All right. Well, then I will take us for something super sweet and joyous to the only other thing that I really watched that was worth a damn this week that'll make Andrew happy. And it's a measure of revenge that I'm watching it when he's not here. But in the last, I think 2 days, I watched both Mad Max Fury Road and Furiosa. Um, I tried Mad Max a long time ago. I watched it at night. I was a little tired. I didn't get it, fell asleep. So I started watching it yesterday, realized about 30 minutes into it, I was like, I don't know if this is for I was like, I don't know if this is for me. Like, I just don't get it. It doesn't feel like it explains the story real well. It's a lot of action without a lot of explanation. It's just chaos. And um, but as it went on, the longer that it went on, the more you kind of get pulled into the story. Um, the more it just works. And by the end of it, I really thought that Fury Road was a really good movie. It kind of made me laugh because you're in this post-nuclear apocalypse, um, which is kind of confusing if you take the original Mad Max movies. But anyways, they're in a post-nuclear apocalypse. Um, and there's people with like sores on their bodies and all this stuff because everything's a mess, and we're in this dead desert wasteland. And the premise of Fury Road is that the Furiosa character played by Charlize Theron, there is a big settlement, and this big settlement is run by this big scary looking dude, whose name I should know because I just watched both of these movies and I can't remember his name, but it's something weird. But he's a big scary dude with long white hair and a big scary mask and all this stuff. And it turns out he keeps this group of like pristine women that haven't been affected by um, like radiation and all this other stuff, and he keeps them kind of off to the side, and they're basically for breeding. Like he's got these like I think it's 5 women, and his only goal is to try and make perfect children for himself. Everybody else be damned. And so the gist of this movie is part one. One part of it is that Mad Max um, is he's been tied up. He's been a prisoner for a while now in this encampment. Um, what I didn't understand, and I think it was just literally for physical weight. But when they start chasing down, so go back a second. Charlize Theron breaks these women out that this ruler has, and she goes under the guise of going on a supply run. She has them stashed in her truck. And as she's going on the supply run, she takes a turn and starts taking these women away. And so, big bad guy finds out that his women have been stolen, and uh, they go off, and he sends his people after them. And so, one of the cars has Tom Hardy's Mad Max like tied to the front of it, and that's literally he's just tied to the front of it. He doesn't participate in any way. His hands are chained behind his back, and it, I think they explained it as literally using him for balance on the car so they can do crazy shit while they're driving. Um, but everything goes kind of chaotic, and for a moment, um, Charlize Theron's little convoy gets away, and Max and the guy driving his car, played by Nicholas Holt, follow after them, and they're all the only ones together. And it made me laugh because you have this like desert apocalypse with all these people that are you know not great looking and not in great shape, and then you have Zoe Kravitz, the girl from the third Transformers movie that's a supermodel, like one other like girl that I'm pretty sure was a supermodel, another pretty girl, Charlize Theron, Tom Hardy, and Nicholas Holt all together. I'm like, so these like the only beautiful people in the entire apocalypse are all together on the run. And so, I mean, really, the rest of the movie is them trying to get these girls to uh, a memory that Charlize Theron's Furiosa has of what she calls Eden. It's a place that was actually green, and had water and plant life and all this stuff. And so her goal is to get back there and take these women with her because she was raised in a society run by women. And so she thinks that these women will be safe there, and nobody knows where it is. Um, and so the movie goes on with about half hour to 45 minutes to go. She gets to where she thinks Eden is, and there's her people, and they're like, yeah, you would have driven right past it if you got here. And turns out it's been wiped out too. It's gone. And so the end of the movie is them turning around, basically knowing that everybody from the place that they were just at is coming after her. So they turn around and head them off and go back to the place. It's called the Citadel. Um, and basically beat the bad guys there, blow up the only entrance to the place, and take it over for themselves because there is water there. There is a little bit of greenery there. There's all this stuff that would still for them be considered Eden because it's so rare. And like that's the gist of the movie. I mean, there's not a lot to it. It's almost like Jackpot in that you've got this group of people, they're trying to get away, trying to get somewhere safe and happy. They have to pivot, end up somewhere else, and that's it. People die along the way. There's amazing car chases and explosions and action and all that. Um, and the acting is really great. Like Tom Hardy's great as Mad Max. Charlize Theron is always great. I liked Nicholas Holt. The people that the he plays this kind of subgroup of people from the Citadel. They're called War Dogs, and they're all like I think they paint their skin white because they're so white. Um, but the guy that is in charge definitely runs the place like a cult. So he's got them all convinced that if they die in battle, they'll go to Valhalla. Like he's using old Norse kind of ideas to make these people martyrs for him in battle so that he can just have them go out there and fight and be willing to die because it suits his needs as a kind of ruler on high. And so Nicholas Holt is one of them, and he kind of comes to his senses before the end of the movie and becomes a good guy. And so that's Fury Road. And like I said, um, plot wise, there's not necessarily a lot to it. The characters do definitely develop. The acting is great. It's just it is sparse. It's definitely a show don't tell movie. Like there's a ton of stuff going on that you have to glean the story from as you go. Um, and and ultimately it works. It started really slow for me. I would say if you're not into it after 30 minutes, if you can push through, get to that 45-minute mark and see if it grabs you. Because by the time I was done, I was really satisfied. And when I started it, I was convinced I would not be.
Now with these Mad, because I know Mad Max started what in the 80s, 90s,
79, I believe, was the first
29.
one with Mel Gibson, and directed by the same person. George Miller actually directed these new ones also.
Okay.
And so before we started recording, I read up on this a little bit, and so the timeline for Mad Max gets really confusing because
Hmm.
um, the original Mad Max, filmed in 1979, takes place in like 1981. And the idea is that there was not a nuclear apocalypse at that time. There was a gas and oil crisis.
Got
And
it.
this takes place in Australia. Um, and so it's Mel Gibson being very Australian in Australia.
Hmm.
And and so there's like a semblance of civilization. There's stores and towns and things like that in the first one that still are kind of there, but things are going sideways. In the second one, it's supposed to be so the second one is Mad Max, the Road Warrior. And in the Road Warrior, we're now deeper into this huge crisis. Civilization has, effectively collapsed. Everything's kind of a mess or whatever. They do a third one, which is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. That's the one with Tina Turner. And in that one, there has been a nuclear apocalypse at this point. So this one now takes place. I think that one took place 15 years after the the 1984 film. So that now we're up to 1999 is when Thunderdome is supposed to take place. So I guess when George Miller wanted to make Fury Road, his original plan was to have Mel Gibson come back and be an old man Mad Max in this movie. Now, I don't know if it was because of all the trouble that Mel Gibson
Yeah.
got himself into publicly. I don't know what the decision was that led them to not cast him and to cast Tom Hardy. But I guess before Fury Road came out, there was a lead up mini comic book series. And that comic book series said that Fury Road takes place 30 years after Thunderdome. But somehow Max is basically the same age as he was in Thunderdome. So, like, the timeline kind of gets all sketchy. And one of the things that I read that was kind of um, helpful was just kind of to look at the entire Mad Max saga as more like a myth um than a hardcore story. So like just assume some things don't line up because they
Mhm.
just don't, because the way that things have happened over the years and the way they put them together, some things don't line up. Um, but Fury Road is supposed to take place after um, Thunderdome, and then Furiosa takes place before Mad Max Fury Road. But it's that one's a little imperfect too, because you definitely see her as a little girl in the place that is the Eden she's thinking of in Fury Road. So when we first meet Furiosa in the Furiosa movie, she's literally in this place that's green. She's picking a fruit off of a tree with some of her friends and whatever. And these, bad road warrior dudes show up, surprised to find this place, kidnap her, bring her back, and then all hell breaks loose. Um, Chris Hemsworth plays one of the main bad guys in this one. Really, really the main bad guy, even though he gets a little time off screen for a while. But they put him in a prosthetic nose. He plays a like a heavier, um, slightly less intelligent kind of Australian accent. Um, and his character, I think I know Furiosa, as far as rating wise goes from basically everybody, is definitely lower than Fury Road. And I think some of it is because Chris Hemsworth's character might be just a little too silly. It's part of his like insanity. Like it works. It's not bad, but he is definitely sillier than anything that happened in Fury Road. And any other character that is in
So just to
Furiosa.
sorry, just to clarify, because I don't know anything about Mad Max. Do you need to have seen the ones in the 70s and eight, the ones prior to Fury Road and
No,
most
I feel like they may have been helpful because, like I said, those first 30 minutes for me were a little confusing. Like it was just he was getting thrown in jail or prison and he was a
Sure.
slave to whatever. And I don't know how much of that would have made more sense if I had watched the originals. I've never seen the original Mad Max movies. So I
Okay.
really was picking up Fury Road as my first real Mad Max. Now I knew of them. I knew he was driving across the desert in cars and they were blowing shit
Right.
up and doing all this stuff, but I didn't know much about him. So
Yeah. I
you
mean, they
don't
don't
need
really
them.
appeal to me, but I mean, the ratings are great. So that's the other thing. I'm looking right now for the most recent two. They're both of above on the critic side, right?
Yeah,
Over 85%.
yeah,
Fury Road's higher. That's like in the 90s. That's yeah, there's definitely something there. Which
yeah.
maybe I
Uh,
should give it a try, even though probably not my
just try and stick through that beginning because
yeah,
it's low on, like I said, explaining kind of the world. You just kind of got to picture. You have to take it in from context, which is fine, but it takes a little while to get you there.
right.
So like I said, if you can get to that like 45-minute mark, which is a long way, and they're long movies, I think each one's 2.5 hours.
Mhm.
Um, but if you can get to that point, I think that's kind of like the point where you're crossing over and you're into it. Um,
Right.
and just everybody in both films, to be honest, is just plays their parts really well. One thing that I noticed, and I think they probably shouldn't have done, they cast a little girl to play young Furiosa, and when they did close-ups on her face, they used a little bit of CGI to make her look a little more like what's her name, like Anya Taylor
Kind of.
Joy,
Yeah.
because Anya Taylor Joy is such an this sounds mean, but it's not. I think she's beautiful, but she's an odd looking girl. Like she doesn't have super stereotypical. Like nobody else out there really looks like Anya Taylor Joy right now.
No, she's got
You,
very unique
yeah,
features. Sort of like
and
Emma Stone in some regards, right? Like
sure,
with very
sure,
big eyes. I
mhm,
think her eyes are a little bit like, what is it, like further apart, perhaps, than
yeah,
yeah.
and like Ella Purnell from Fallout, right? These girls, they look different than most of the people in Hollywood, but they're beautiful. I love Anya Taylor Joy. I think she really is pretty. Um,
Mhm.
and she's very grungy and dirty and Furiosa. Like it's certainly the less pretty Anya Taylor-Joy. But anyways, they took the young girl and they kind of CGI'd up her face to make her look more like Anya Taylor-Joy,
Sure.
which I think I shouldn't have noticed it if they were doing it. Like it should have just been like, oh, that girl looks a lot like her. But instead, I was like, she looks too much like her. So it like distracted me. I don't know if it distracted anybody else. It may not. And it definitely didn't ruin the movie for me or anything, but I found myself actually looking up to see if they did that.
Uh,
Um,
and what did you
so
find that
they
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 did?
did, yeah, yeah, they did just a little bit. Like it's not, like I said, it's not overly distracting. And if you're not paying attention and weren't looking for it, or if it didn't kind of trigger you, then you wouldn't even notice and you'd be fine.
Right.
Um,
But they didn't do that in the Queen's Gambit when they had the younger looking girl. They just had a girl with red hair.
yeah, yeah. What I thought was interesting is I don't think they did it with Anya Taylor-Joy at the end of the film when they're starting to lead towards her being Charlize Theron, but they
Hmm.
did a couple of shots that were kind of up shots, so they were like from below and shooting up it towards her face. And she's got the same haircut as Charlize Theron in Fury Road and the same makeup and everything.
Is it
And
supposed to be a younger version of her in the second film?
yes, so it's a prequel.
It's a prequel. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah, it's definitely a prequel because it goes through her growing up and becoming the
Serial.
Furiosa. And then at the very end, they kind of lead into they show her breaking the girls out for Fury Road. So,
Hmm. Got it.
um,
Cool.
but there's a few shots that they do where you can kind of see why she was cast as Furiosa when it was played by Charlize Theron, who was another person that is very hard to replicate. Charlize Theron is beautiful, and she's more traditionally pretty. Like she's, I always thought the person that she looked the most like was Ashley Judd. Like I thought they had some similarities um, a long time ago, but it was interesting that the way they shot Anya Taylor Joy, she looked at least you could be like this girl in 20 years is gonna be
Right.
Charlize Theron. Um, so yeah, I feel like I'm probably talking generally to people that have already seen this. Like to me, it always felt like everybody has seen Fury Road and everybody was going to see Furiosa, even though it was new or relatively new. It came out last year, this year. It might have
Furiosa
kind of,
just
yeah,
came out, I feel like, within the past 6 months,
yeah. I
right?
think it was this year. Yeah.
Definitely
Uh,
this year. Yeah.
and but like I said, I always felt like everybody saw Fury Road, and I was always the guy that was like, I don't know, I just didn't get it, and everybody's like, you're an idiot. Um, and like I can see why I didn't get it, but at the same time, like once I got past that point, I
Hmm.
can also see why everybody likes it so much. So
Would you consider
definitely
it
worth.
sci-fi or not really?
No, because I mean, it's tricky. There's not a lot of science involved with the science fiction. It's
Sure.
literally like gearheads. It's all cars. Um,
Okay.
in a lot of ways, like they don't talk about the construction of the cars. It's not like they're sitting there and they're like, I got a V6
Yeah.
engine with a blah blah blah. It comes up like three times in the whole thing, but it's not just them working on cars. It's not Fast and the Furious, right?
Right.
They just happen to have these cars and it all takes place out there.
Yeah.
Which
I just always saw it as like a guy's like monster truck dream movie in the desert. I'm like, yeah,
it's
I'm gonna pass.
not that, you know, I mean, it really,
I was just like, ooh, hard pass doesn't seem appealing. But I don't know, the reviews look pretty good. You seem to like it.
I,
Um,
I
and
definitely
you
think with
like
Fury
it.
Road adding in Charlize Theron, and even though
Mhm.
the women she was helping escape are probably too pretty for this world that they're in, right?
Yeah.
Um, like
Yeah.
they're all beautiful. Uh, but like it
They need
adds,
help.
well, yeah, but it like softens the story a little bit. It gives you a reason for the chaos that's happening in it instead of just
Yeah.
like the original Mad Max, which is just survival, which is fine. I mean, that doesn't necessarily make a bad movie.
Mhm.
But this like softens it and I think kind of makes it for a broader audience and a more modern audience. Um,
Cool.
so definitely if you to just get through that first bit, and I think it's definitely worth a watch. So
Nice. That's good to know.
yeah.
Cool.
All right. So you got two things to finish this out on. So I figured
Yeah.
maybe you can talk to watchers while we're still on heavy duty stuff, and then you can close us out with some funny.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. Awesome. So the Watchers, and this is we were talking pre-show about this, Kevin and I. It's Dakota Fanning. I haven't seen her in really much in a while, at least in anything big. I know you said you had seen her in a few things. And
Yeah.
this is a film actually directed by M. Night Shyamalan's younger daughter.
That's right. That's right.
And yeah, I was curious about it. It came out in the spring sometime, April, May, June. It's his daughter Ashana, who I guess wants to take daddy's or take go into daddy's footsteps in that sense,
Mhm.
and make thriller spin type of films. And yeah, this is about it takes place in Western Ireland. It's about a girl who is figure like early 20s. That character that Dakota Fanning plays, her name is Lucy, and she lives out in Ireland and seems to have a pretty troubled past. Is kind of a bit of a badass and like just one of those girls who just doesn't want to play by the rules and is just exploring, trying to find herself. We figure she's like college age or just post college, and she's like in the beginning scene, she's working at a pet shop and she's ripping from her vape, and um she's asked by, I guess, the head of the pet shop, hey, can you run this errand for me? I'm sorry, her character's name is Mina, my mistake. Um, and they ask her to run this errand with this parakeet looking bird to a different, I guess, pet shop. And she goes in her car and she goes for a drive the following day to take this pet, and she has to follow her GPS, and she gets into like this very woodsy area where she's been living in this town. So she goes outside of the village and town that she's been in. She's in this woodsy area, and as she's driving through this woods, her GPS starts acting up, and all of a sudden it just shuts off. The car shuts down and it gets like very dark and eerie. And she gets out of the car and she's like, what the hell's happening? She calls this parakeet. It's like a golden parakeet, or I forgot what bird it is. Let's go with parakeet. And and the one thing that this parakeet says is don't something like don't try to like don't die or something like that. So like something
That's
like that.
comforting.
It's very comforting and really funny. Um so that's like pretty funny. Don't something like don't try to die or something like that. It's pretty funny. So she's out in the wilderness in this woods, and it gets like pretty dark and scary, and she's walking around, and then she's trying to figure out like a way out, and she sees like something of like resemblance of a human in the distance. So she's like, hey, we need help. And she's following, and then she tries to go back where she was, and now the car's gone. So it's really creepy and weird. And then it starts to get dark out, and this woman, she hears a woman's voice, and she's like, if you want to live, come with me. So she runs, and they then go into this essentially this like safe house. And this older woman that she meets, her name is Madeline. And then she meets a boy named Daniel and then Kira. And the four of them are in this safe house. And they explain to her, like, you just need to be on your best behavior because the watchers are going to be here. And she's like, what the heck is happening? Every night we have to come into this glass safe house, and the window opens, and for us it looks like a mirror, but on the outside these creatures watch us, and we're pretty much, they're an audience for us, the four of us, and they study us and want to know who we are. And it's this really creepy premise, and they're just sitting there and like eating. They're not doing anything extraordinary, but they bring her to the front and to show like we've got a new person for you to study and idolize, and they push Dakota Fanning's character Mina towards the front of the room, and she just sees herself. She doesn't, but they hear noises and of like almost like applause and clapping, and you're just wondering like what the heck is out there. And then at the end of the evening, they're able to leave the safe house and wander, but like they can't wander too far, more than a half day's worth of walking away from the safe house, because if they go on the outskirts, they're gonna die. So it's like one of these like really strange, bizarre, dark type of films where you're like, okay, why are they there? What's happening? And you come to find that Dakota Fanning's character, Mina's like, well, I want the fuck out of here. I don't want to be here. So let me try to like rock the boat and get the hell out of here and figure out what's going on. So they give her like a list of rules of stuff that she has to comply with. Like, you can't turn your back on the mirror or the audience while they're playing. You can't open the door once it's closed before we perform for the watchers. You can't go into these burrows. There's like burrows almost as if they're like chipmunks, and that's where the watchers stay during the day. So she, of course, breaks the rules, goes down into the burrows with the guy Daniel, who's in the house with her, and she sees like a creature below, which is really creepy, but like brings some stuff from below up back to the surface with her. And she's like, I want the hell out of this place. And she eventually does escape this crazy woodsy area and safe house area that they're in. And then you come to find what got them there in the first place. Why was this place created? What is the deal with, what is the story behind these three other people that she's in the safe house with? Two of them have been there for within the past year and have been brought in sort of like her into this almost like alternative world. And then this woman, Madeline, who's been there the longest, we don't know why she's there and how long she's been there, and something's peculiar about her. So you come to find, of course, I had to like do research after the fact, but it's supposed to be like a really abstract, scary version of like Noah's Ark.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the story of Noah, and then some other, I think, biblical stuff that's brought into play here. And I was more just interested in like why they were there, what's happening. I of course had to Google and research a lot. Like there was certain parts, and I watched this from home with subtitles, and I definitely had to stop a few times because I wanted to look up certain things, especially as someone who was not very let's say competent in the Bible to look up things. But I thought it was just okay. Honestly, there were times where I'm like, okay, they're just trying to scare you, like fake jump scares, like jump scares. You're like, oh my God, something's gonna happen, but something doesn't happen. That was a little odd. Uh, it was fine. It was just fine. I don't know.
Is it based on a book?
I think it might be. Actually, you know what? It is. It is. It's based on
Okay.
something written by a guy out in Ireland. The Watchers, based on a book. I think they reference that. Oh, it's based on an Irish folklore. 1987 novel by Dean R. Koontz. Okay.
The Dean
Yeah.
Coon?
Is that what it says?
No,
Loosely.
the Watchers is different. I have the Watchers. And I've read the Watchers. I don't think
Oh,
this
that's
is
different. That's Watchers. The Watchers, 2022 horror lit book named by A.M. Shine.
yeah, There you go. Yeah, because that's
Okay,
what it
A.M.
shows in
Shine.
the writers. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I guess Watchers is different than The Watchers. Is that
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
that's
sense.
separate? Okay. Yeah. So this is The Watchers, just to clarify. But yeah, so it's supposed to be horror. It Yes, it could get a little scary when you see what these creatures are, and it's going to be a little bit spoilerific, as Andrew calls it, right? But these watchers are basically fairies, but evil fairies, right?
Hmm.
And also known as changelings.
Okay.
And they're trying to imitate the life form of these
Yep.
humans that have come in and stepped into their world. And they are taking the shape and trying to imitate the way these people sound. It was definitely creepy in certain areas. Like I wouldn't recommend this to someone who doesn't like horror at all. It was eerie. They try to relate a lot of it to, I guess, these folklores, and even
Hmm.
like I was watching these thorough um reviews on YouTube afterwards that were related. I wouldn't even thought it was like, oh yeah, this is Noah's Ark. Like I had no clue. I was like, oh, that's kind of a stretch, but sure, bring that into that. And if you notice too, they also talk about it. There's a lot of it's very dark. The only thing that's really colorful is this parakeet, who she names Darwin, by the way, after they get stranded there, and he's like, don't try to die, don't try to die, or whatever he's saying, something like don't die. um and this parakeet becomes like a pretty important part of the movie too, as you'll find, because this parakeet essentially is sort of responsible for, showing that, almost like guiding them the way out of the woods, but also is responsible for getting her there in the first place, because she had to make a trip
Hmm.
initially to get this parakeet to another pet shop, so we're told, right? So yeah, it's fascinating in some regard. I don't know. I didn't really like it, but I also was like, all right, I have to see how this, how with certain like horror
Yeah.
films, you gotta see how this ends. But it left me with so many unanswered questions too. And I think that's also why I had to keep on stopping and Googling. And then of course afterwards, I'm like, let me just watch all of these reviews, especially as someone who doesn't know much about the Bible, who doesn't know much about English, or just anything about Irish folklore and fairies and changelings and these things like that. So I was like, all right, what is this? It's creepy and weird. If you like creepy and weird, then yeah, you'll get something out of it. But I think a lot of it was just, not that like horror movies are supposed to be super believable, but there was just, it was definitely slow at certain parts, and it seemed a little bit forced as well. Um, I was watching an analysis of just about Ishana M. Night. I guess she also takes her father's last name, right? Or for Shyamalan,
Hmm.
Ishana, the daughter who directed it.
Yep.
And it's interesting because I guess she has a fascination with like Love Island and such. They put it in like a Love Island type of show that Dakota Fanning's character watches while she's in the safe house.
Hmm.
So like while they're watching her, she's just watching TV. And I guess they're trying to draw like a parallel of like being stuck in like this reality show, which is
Play on reality TV.
a play on reality TV, which is funny because she's watching that while they're watching her watch that. And that was sort of Shana Shyamalan's, I guess, creative spin, or just her idea to put that in there. So yeah, yeah, it was just okay.
I would
But
say I wonder, I would be really curious to see an Irish specific review of this, because so you talked about changelings, and changelings are like, they're a hardcore belief in at least old Ireland.
mhm,
So there's a podcast called Lore, Lore.
okay.
Um, and since you just watched this, and since you're, maybe still in research mode, if you find the episode about changelings, the whole, the entire podcast is about um, breaking down old folklore and the way
Okay.
it works. So you have stories about vampires, you have haunted lighthouses, you have all these things that have been stories in different parts of the
Yeah.
world. But there is one specifically about changelings um, and and fairies, and fairies in Ireland are not like your cute little fuzzy fairies. They're,
Oh,
they're changelings. Like they uh like the whole deal was, people legitimately thought when somebody in their life started acting different, that at some point they had been taken and replaced with a changeling. And
Hmm.
so like it was a legitimate historical belief in Ireland. So like I said, I would wonder if this would play a little different over there, because I would guess that this A.M. Shine person that wrote the book is
Yeah,
probably Irish.
it's Irish. Yeah, I remember they were talking about that.
So I think s- it's one of those things that maybe doesn't translate as well to an American audience
I think that's the
because
case
it's not as rooted in like culture.
100%. And I mean, I'm looking at the reviews right now. Rotten Tomatoes, 32% from the critics, 52% from the audience. It was, yeah, I don't think we can resonate with that, honestly. Even when they're like, it's Noah's Ark, I was like, how? There's not two of everything. There's four
Yeah.
people in the house. There's one parakeet. Like, where's Noah's Ark? I don't see it. Like, I just didn't see it. I don't
Yeah.
know. And I said, I'm also not a very religious person. I don't know too much about the Bible, but also I was just like, all right, this might be, like you said, something that resonates more with their culture. And I wonder, but yeah, maybe they loved it. Who knows?
Yeah. To see,
But
I'm actually more curious about it knowing, and I feel like I knew that already. Like I feel like at some point I had seen something that it was about changelings and that because that didn't come as a shock to me, and I don't know why I would have known that. But having heard that story, and it's well told on that podcast. They're usually short. The episodes are like 25 to 30 minutes, maybe.
it's called
Uh,
Lore, Lore.
yeah. There's a I think it's animated, but there's a semi-animated version of it on Amazon Prime also. But they go into fewer of the stories and they break them up a little bit more. I think they're a little more in depth on the actual podcast.
Yeah,
But if you
interesting.
find the one about changelings, it's really interesting. Um, they're all interesting, but you know,
Mhm.
to find out about changelings is really would be helpful to know this story and
Oh yeah.
why it
It's
is what
it's
it is.
it's definitely very creepy, but yeah, ooh, it's tough. And I mean, she plays an American, um,
Mm,
Dakota Fanning, whereas like most of her cast that they're you'd imagine somewhere in Europe or Irish. And you find out about her tragic past too as a character and how that sort of sticks with her during this experience when she's put in a very different type of traumatic experience by being there in the woods versus what she experienced in her own childhood. So it's a lot to carry and to watch at certain points. And I think that's why afterwards I was like, I have to do more research because it was a lot to digest as a movie. But overall, it was fine. Yeah, it wasn't easy to follow. I'll be honest, it wasn't easy to follow, especially if you're not familiar with that stuff. But yeah, give it a watch if you're into folklore, Irish culture. I mean, I guess because it is a part of their culture. If you're into creepy type of films, I'm intrigued by creepy films sometimes. It wasn't, I guess it was a thriller. It was pretty scary at certain parts. Like if you're afraid of seeing images of certain creatures, yeah, probably don't see this film. But yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it was
I'll
okay.
watch it. I'm still waiting. I'm waiting for it to stream, but I think as soon as I see it streaming, I'll watch it. And uh, having at least a little knowledge of changelings actually makes me a little more interested in it. I
Yeah, it
think than
sounds
I
like
was
you know a
before.
lot more than I do because I'm like, huh? And I have to keep going through, and I'm just like, all right, I don't know what the hell is going on, but whatever. I'm always open to learn. That's why I put subtitles on, and then I'll stop and do my research while I'm watching and clearly after I'm watching. So, but yeah, if you're a fan of the Shyamalan family, if you're a fan of Dakota Fanning, if you're a fan of just creepy shit, if you're a fan of Irish folklore, give it a try. There's something for everyone, you would hope,
Yeah.
right? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm a
Uh,
big Dakota Fanning fan, so that
if
was
you're
one
a
of the keys
Dakota
too.
Fanning fan, heck, give it a watch. I hadn't seen her in a while. I was like, "What's up, Dakota? I haven't seen you in a while. Let's see you in something new." So that's
She
really.
was just in Ripley on Netflix also.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I
Yeah.
forgot about Ripley.
And
I didn't
then
see Ripley, but you reviewed it and you mentioned that.
yeah, yeah. And then, like I said in the pre-show before we started, if anybody is interested, The Alienist was on FX, and it's a show about basically 1900 and them studying a series of murders, and I think it's like New York City area, but 1900, so it's all old timey kind of stuff. But
Mhm.
there's basically three of them investigating this series of murders. And it's really, really, really good. It is definitely a dramatic show. Um, and it's got a little bit of a creep factor. I wouldn't call it a horror series, but it's definitely eerie.
Yeah.
Um, and really, really, really good.
Nice.
So,
Cool.
all right.
Yeah.
And so I'll take us out with
Oh,
something fun.
yeah. Well, it's not that fun,
Oh
but it's
no.
still, sorry. It's not creepy.
There
It's
you go.
just more of a dramatic uh movie that I watched a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, we had a lot of fun stuff to talk about last week with D23. So
Mhm.
I saved this specifically for this evening to talk about. I used to be funny. I have watched now, I guess, 3 or 4 of Rachel. It's Rachel Sennett. I keep on calling her Rachel Sennett. It's Rachel Sennett, who Andrew thinks I look like. You be the judge. Anyway,
You both have dark hair.
yeah, right? Like, yeah. I think it's the attitude, and maybe we both have a Jewish look. Whatever. She's funny, and I think she's beautiful, so I take it as a compliment. So thank you, Andrew. Anyway, uh, she's the protagonist in this film, and she plays a character by the name of Sam, and she is a comedian or I guess an aspiring comedian. She does stand-up comedy in the evenings. By day, she's a nanny, so she's in her figure her mid late 20s. And it goes back and forth between the present and the past. And the past is when she's, doing stand up pretty frequently every couple of nights. And she lives with 2 of her roommates that are also stand up comics. And during the day, she's a nanny for this family, a family with a daughter who's in middle school, early high school. And this family has the father who's busy working. This girl is going through her preteen, early teenage years, and Rachel Sennett's character Sam becomes a very close friend of this girl Brooke, who she's a nanny for. They go to movies, they craft together, they have a lot of fun. And Rachel's character Sam is not your typical nanny. She's not just, oh, let me just do things in the house. Like, they go out together. They become very, very close. And Brooke, the girl who she watches, her mother is very sick. We don't know like what the deal is, but from our understanding, it's terminal. So she's going through that, and that's sort of just the past. And then it goes to the present, where Sam is struggling with PTSD and apparently hasn't performed in almost a year doing stand-up comedy, and she is very anxious and is becoming more so distant and avoiding going out, and apparently broke up with her boyfriend a couple months ago, who she was very close with, and is not socializing anymore, not going to the comedy club anymore. She's just sitting at home, and you're just wondering what's going on. And as this is going on, you see on the news that Brooke, the girl that she watched a year or 2 prior, is missing. They don't know where she is and such. And Sam feels very responsible in some regard, and has this desire to want to help look for Brooke, even though she's got her own issues that she's going through. And you come to find out that a lot of these issues stem with her PTSD from, unfortunately, and I'm just going to give it away, the father sexually assaults her. You see that he becomes a drinker and becomes fond of Sam, and especially after the loss of his wife, they get very close, and she becomes best friends with the daughter, and they
Is the father Noah?
mm-hmm.
Oh,
Even
that's too bad.
better.
I love the actor. I hate to see him as a rapist. That's a bummer. I
Yeah.
Ennis Esmer is a lot of fun in a lot of cases, but
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Cameron.
oh,
It's
okay, then
not
I
Noah.
don't feel so
Sorry.
bad.
Sorry. Yeah, it's Cameron. Sorry, not Noah. It's
Okay,
Cameron. Jason Jones is the actor. No,
okay,
and Noah is her boyfriend.
okay, good.
Noah's her boyfriend. Whew.
I love
Yeah.
if you've ever watched Schitt's Creek, he has a small run in Schitt's Creek.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Gotcha. Yeah. No, so the father's Cameron, Jason Jones, and you think you're like, what? I mean, throughout the film, they don't really reveal this to the end, but what could be so bad that this girl was so close with the family that she was a nanny for is no longer in contact? What's going on? And then you find out that not only has this event really given her PTSD, but also her father goes to jail, deservedly so. And now Brooke doesn't have parents right now. She's got a father in jail and a mother who's deceased. So, I mean, you get to see that she's pretty much raised, I think, by the aunt at that point, but everyone that she's loved, she is gone. She's experimenting with drugs, getting involved in the wrong type of activities. And at that point, she withdraws from life. Both Brooke, the character, and even Rachel Sennett's character, Sam, where she just stops participating. She is seriously changed by these series of events to the point where she just breaks her and her boyfriend break up. She doesn't want to, I mean, to the point where you're like, is she suicidal? You don't know. She's just very depressed. She doesn't work. She's just pretty much in bed all day and doesn't want to, the present day, that is, right? Because they
mhm.
show her as Annie and her being funny and doing stand-up comedy, and how this really has changed her life. So yeah, it was good, very hard to watch at certain points, but it just shows how unfortunate certain how events could really change a person, and not even just a person but a family too, on both ends, because
Yeah.
this young girl didn't know that she thought that her nanny babysitter made this up. This is someone she
Oh,
loved and respected, and then she thinks, why are you taking my father away from me, and he's being put in jail because of some story that my nanny said. There's no way that he would harm her.
yeah.
So it's putting her in a position where she feels bad, and she wants to look for this girl because this is a girl that she cared about, and the girl doesn't realize what her father did to her daughter while under the influence. But yeah, it's definitely a tough watch. You get to see how funny she is during her comic bits for sure, and then you see how serious she can be in these other scenes in the film. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the one thing I see across all the reviews, because the reviews are up and down. There's some that are really high. There's some
yeah.
fives, whatever. But everybody seems to agree that she was really good. Um,
Oh yeah, Rachel Senna was great. Oh yeah,
yeah,
you see her in many different forms of this in this film, and it's a topic that is being talked about time and time again, of just the male abuse of power, and how
yeah,
unfortunately some women are put in situations that they should never been put in the first place, and then the ramifications as a result of being put in these situations. So yeah, it definitely explores that, and she does a really great job at portraying someone who's been through a situation like that, and unfortunately, you know, how it affects an entire family, not just the victim of
yeah.
it as well. So yeah, it's on Prime. That was a free watch on Prime. Came out late last year. I don't know if it was in theaters, to be honest with you. It might have just been something that was put on Prime. But yeah, if you like Rachel Sennett and her work, give her a go. I know she's she is very big in the comedy scene. She has done
Hmm.
stand-up comedy. She's in Bodies, 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 Bottoms, which was pretty popular. That came out, I think, earlier this year, which I reviewed.
Hmm.
It's not a fan of. And she's in Shiva Baby, which I think is hysterical. So yeah, she's got a lot of depth, and I think this girl's got a lot of good stuff in her future, truly.
Yeah, I've always thought that genuinely funny actors and comedians and things like that make better dramatic actors.
Yeah.
Because if you watch comedy is really, really hard to do.
It's so
Like
hard.
there's timing involved, there's all this stuff that like
Mhm.
you just kind of have to be a natural at. But if you are good at that stuff, it seems like that makes all of the dramatic stuff easier for an actor. And so the people that are just genuinely funny just seem
Mhm.
to make such great actors overall, compared to, the other way around. If you take somebody that's a great dramatic actor, they
Mhm.
struggle with comedy sometimes. It's not for everybody, but I think she is funny, and I think that definitely is going to serve her well in her career because it'll gonna give her the opportunity to do a little bit of both.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too,
So
for sure. So yeah, give it a watch. It was hard. Certain scenes were very difficult to watch, for sure.
yeah,
But she does a good job at, you know, relaying and a much larger message and a story that I think some women can relate to, or at least, if you can't relate to it, somebody who's been through it. So yeah, pretty good.
all right then. Well, with that, we're probably done for the week. I have no idea what I'm going to watch for this next week. I don't
Yeah.
know what's coming out at all. I know that the following week, and this is jumping way ahead, on the 30th on Peacock, Fall Guy, which was in the theater that I did not see,
I saw.
will be streaming on Peacock, and I think they're going to stream. It's either a director's cut or with some commentary or something like that. There's something special about the version they're going to put up on Peacock, so I'm actually excited for that. I wanted to see that one, so that'll be in a couple of weeks. I have no idea what's coming this week, but I'll find something. I know you're pretty good about finding stuff. And
Yeah, I'm gonna be in Chicago over the weekend.
okay,
Actually, guess I won't be here, but I will be there the following week, and I'm sure I'll find something on the plane, or there's stuff I definitely I wanna catch in the next week or two. So
I
now,
have found in my adult travel that sometimes you like being stuck on a plane and finding that movie that you're like, okay, I guess I'll just watch this because for whatever reason you didn't watch it before.
right.
The one that I always remember, the one that gets me was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent with Pedro Pascal and Nick Cage.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I had heard good things, and it was sitting there on the plane, and I was like, fine, I'll just watch it. And I friggin' love that movie. That movie's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, sometimes you get a gem when you just don't really have anything else to do but sit there and watch a movie. Uh,
Yeah, especially if you're like me and who can sleep on planes. I can't. So I have to either do something like a word search or watch TV. But that's how I found out about Fleabag. I watched the whole first season to and from Jamaica, and then the second season I watched on Prime when I got back, like within the days after.
yeah.
So yeah, maybe I'll find some gold while I'm on my flight to and from Chicago. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. Look forward. Like I said, I feel like every time I travel, I find the one. The other one that I really liked was the Steven Spielberg one from a year or two ago about his like filmmaking journey, the Fablemans.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Steven Spielberg.
yeah, the Fablemans.
Yes.
I
Yes.
really liked that one.
I saw that.
Yeah, and that was like I said, that was a plane catch for me. I don't know that I would have caught it anywhere else, and I was glad to be trapped on a plane watching the whole thing. So,
For
um,
sure.
yeah, traveling makes for strange TV bedfellows. So
Yes.
you might find something good in there. So, all right, cool. Well, with that, then I will say thank you to everybody for watching or listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.